focused inquiry. The point of this video is that I had to create a presentation outlining a specific chapter of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and how it corresponds to a social issue in today's society. My group was given Chapter 2, and we found the issue of media bias. So, media bias is a social problem that exists in contemporary society, which we should work to resolve because of the misconceptions, discrimination, and reinforced stereotypes it creates. Those were our 3 main points in our claim, and to understand how we came to this idea, we must further understand how the chapter played out. So, in Chapter 2, we started in a deserted building left after World War Terminus. Terminus means a final point in space and time. The once busy San Francisco suburb is now empty after a nuclear fallout caused dust to block the sun and kill many animals. This caused a sudden surge in colonization off Earth, and the war machines that were once used to cause devastation were used to ferry humans away. Robots were built to perform labor and used as an incentive to get people to leave. We are met with our main character, John Isidore, as he sits idly in his apartment watching television. This television informs him of his inferiority and marginalizes all inhabitants of Earth as specials, many of which are not given the choice to migrate because of so. The television reinforces the stereotype that Isidore is a chickenhead, or in today's terms, a moron, but he knows better. So, the summary will lead us to our claim, which is media bias is playing a direct role in how we influence and how we feel. We state that reality is what we perceive, and this formulated media bias, whether it be weighed onto politics, television, religion, or other forms of media outlets, reinforces perceived stereotypes of the aforementioned groups in our claim, which, are the minorities. Our first proof that this claim the claim was relevant to the chapter of the book was the quote of, "But the ads directed at the Romanian regulars frightened him. They informed him in a countless procession of ways that he, a special, was not wanted, had no use, could not, even if he wanted to, immigrate." This quote signifies our argument about marginalization and media bias. Marginalization can be defined as an individual being forced into a new system of rules while facing social stigma and stereotypes from the dominant group of society. Because Isidore is marginalized as a chickenhead or a special by the media, he senses an overall feeling of inadequacy set by societal standards of his peers. He is stereotyped in a certain group and isn't given many other options. So how does this relate to our world? Well, marginalization leads to social stigma. Like we've said before, a marginalization is an individual being forced into a new system of rules while facing social stigma and stereotypes from the dominant group of society. A great example of this is women's rights in media. In the 2012 presidential election, many women's issues were covered, from abortion, birth control, Planned Parenthood, women's rights. But we see that media outlets like Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, and Chicago Tribune all quote men far more than women when it comes to women's issues. Now, Not only is this unjust, but it creates stigmas and it will eventually lead to marginalization. Say, a woman works at Planned Parenthood or seeks birth control. People can stigmatize and stereotype this group of people that do these things as certain ways or slander them with demeaning insults. Let's say that. The second quote we came with that represented how our claim related to the chapter was, "Your unique needs for you and you alone." The television dictates to Isidore how much of a better society it is, and how every imaginable possibility can be reached. An interview distinguishes the anxiety of living as a special and the amount of worry which vanishes upon immigration as being one of the best things you can do. Basically, we have a better society and you can't come. So it's being completely biased to their society. How does this work in our world? So grouping within different channels is the phrase we came up with. In today's media, we are starting to notice a grouping within different channels that comes from watching certain channels. For example, CNN, NBC, ABC can be seen as liberal media outlets, especially the former, which can raise questions about not only your political views, but your overall lifestyle if you watch them for news. The same goes for Fox News, where we see huge conservative bias, where individuals can be reprimanded for adding to their viewership. We have an example later in the presentation from a Russian outlet that was actually after we presented this presentation, but I slid it in here to just give a different view of how media bias works in the real world. It's a really good example, but we'll get to it later. Anyways, so the same goes for Fox News. This continues along certain channels. Univision catering to Spanish audiences, BET catering to black audiences, MTV catering to teen audiences, Bravo catering to LGBT audiences, channels based completely off certain views and lifestyles such as healthy eating, traveling, Oprah's own network, literally labeled OWN. And it's within these networks that many stereotypes about genders, races, ages, and lifestyles are formed. We watch them, we see how certain people act, and we apply that stereotype as a real world example. We will take Univision in this graph as an example and display how it is living people from Spanish descent as ones who love overly dramatic soap operas. The demographic change in America, which is what this graph indicates, and how NBC and Fox are planning to launch their own Hispanic channels so they can begin to cater their news to that group of people. This indicates how the news is aware that certain groups of people watch certain channels and they want to also influence them with their views of the news. So, how do these media outlets play a role in how we marginalize Earth? So, lots of people today, especially young people, go on sites like Reddit and 4chan and whatnot, and we watch a lot of funny TV. This is an example we found that highlighted many of the stereotypes that we see about people.
Your names, nationalities, and occupations. Right?
Por favor, señor.
Yes?
Es la primera vez que vengo. ¿Es esta la clase para aprender inglés?
Well, I haven't the faintest idea what you're saying, but I'm sure you're not trying to find the needlework cloth.
Por favor.
It doesn't matter. Have a seat.
Por favor.
Sit down.
Ah, sí.
No, not there.
Por favor.
There.
Ah,
Right, I'll just go round the class and take your names. Yes? Ah, yes. What is your name?
Maximilian Andrea Archimedes Papandreou.
I think I'll just put you down as Max. Take it you're Greek.
He is right, from Athens.
And what is your job?
I walk with sheep.
You walk with sheep. You're a shepherd, you work on a farm.
No, not far.
You just said you work with sheep.
No. Sheeps. Big sheeps. Yes, sheeps. Donkers. Right. I work in office.
And your name?
Anna Schmidt, German au pair.
Usual German efficiency?
Germans are always efficient.
Not her. So. Japanese. Much more efficient.
Nein, Germans are the best.
Japanese make a much better television and cameras.
Now, please, let us have no racialism. In this class, all are equal. Your name?
Alright, so basically the video is highlighting how we see certain cultures. This is from a show called Mind Your Language. It's relatively old, so media bias has been around for a while and still lives today. This is just a quick example I was alluding to earlier about the social media websites we use today. In our group, we had a woman from Ivory Coast. Her name was Sofiane, and I worked with her with this presentation, and she's a very honest, and when you think of people from different countries, you never really know how they're going to act, in my opinion. But with media today and the internet, we tend to just throw labels out there. Basically, she was offended by this map, and I felt kind of bad for showing it, but I think it gets the point across that we need to stop labeling people as what they are. I mean, the map is humorous, but it shouldn't be taken as anything more than that. And like I said earlier, and how Mind Your Language is relatively old, here's a new example of today's media bias. Basically, the top picture is captioned as ordinary citizen, innocent bystander. This is the same person in both pictures. The second picture has him labeled as prominent pediatric surgeon, benefactor, and honorable citizen. This is the same man being interviewed by the same news station in retaliation against the protests that were happening in the Ukraine in early April of 2014. The news station is pro-Russian, and by mentioning the person in different attitudes and job titles, hopes to allow for a better understanding of how the protests were taking a negative toll on people's health. Like I said, it was pro-Russian, and the Ukrainians are about Ukrainian revolution that is happening still today is mainly about the whole Russian influence on eastern Ukraine, as far as I can understand. So, our last example of media bias comes specifically from gender roles and what it means to be beautiful. It is here that we see the utterly biased attempts to readjust people to make them more pleasurable, and it's here when social stereotypes of what it means to be beautiful are presented. It's a quick run-through of these. Skinnier, obviously. Bigger breast. Katy Perry, what's up? White skin. I'm not really sure who that is, but it almost looks like a completely different person. Basically, to wrap this up, our key ideas was media feeds self-demoralization, discrimination, misconception, and Earth as a whole. So if you don't understand by now the way people view others or the way they view themselves is becoming a social epidemic, then perhaps you need only to turn to social media where the constant plague of self-demoralization is taking place. Anxiety, inadequacy, and personal failure are running rampant on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. In our schools, by our peers, and in our homes, by our televisions, we see shows like Super Sweet 16, where we find young girls are entitled to Ferraris purchased by their parents. But where does that leave us, the regular people? To further stereotype them and us into our own uniquely separate categories? Do we continue to reinforce what the media says about what is rich and what is poor, what is white and what is black? Or can we expand our horizons and come to terms that the earth is full of all types of people, and people who fall into specific cultures, lifestyles, and genders do not all think the same? Can we begin to see the world as a whole with many different views rather than segregate groups into solely appearing in one way? We say yes. Unfortunately, media bias will continue to lead for us further away from a post-civilized society unless we make the change ourselves. Rather than discriminate against these groups, the media should try to diminish marginalizing societies and instead group the world as a whole. We hope that one day SNL, or whatever its predecessor is, begins to poke fun at the stereotypes seen in today's world and older times, and no longer has to poke fun at marginalizations and discriminations that's happening during the time of the present. So, with that, that was our presentation. The claim of social media creating a bias that's unjustly marginalizing or representing lifestyles. That was found in Chapter 2 of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Thank you.